What could you add to your real estate brokerage that would be a game changer? Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's edition of Note School TV, where every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time, well, we always bring you the most amazing guests and, well, very informative content. And today is no different. We have an amazing guest, and we'll bring him on in just a minute. But before we do, actually four things, right? So number one is make sure and hit the like button, make sure and like what you see here. And number two, if you have not already subscribed to Note School TV channel, then please go ahead and do that so that, well, we can push you some, information about what we do. And then number three, make sure and hit that bell notification. Boom. Yep. Go ahead and hit that bell notification right now, so that you will, you'll know when we go live at 11:05 every Wednesday. Also, please keep the comments coming, guys. Eddie and I truly appreciate your feedback, what you're thinking, what's going on in your marketplace. And so please, it really helps us out. Make sure and continue to send those comments in. And then number five, I guess, right? Make sure and, if you want to learn more about what we do at Note School, simply go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. And we would love to have a conversation with you, and would love to have you to attend one of our master classes, our 2-hour master classes that Eddie does along with Note School's Chief Market Officer, Max Keller. So let's go ahead and do what we do every week at this time, and let's go to the news. So guys, we have been following the Mortgage Credit Availability Index, well, since really the beginning of the pandemic, which was, it was like right over here. So if you kind of look at that, we'll see that you can see right here that basically it falls. There's my straight line, right? Basically falls off the cliff and, kind of bounces around here. And what is significant here is that the Mortgage Credit Availability Index has dropped below 100 for the first time. What this indicates is that credit is getting harder and harder to get, right? So we always talk about at the beginning of the pandemic, it was right up here in the 185 level. And the drop to below 100 means that somewhere between, let's call it 30 and 45% maybe of the folks out there that could get a loan before the pandemic, it just isn't working out now. The credit is tightening. Banks are tightening their mortgage requirements, what it's going to take to get a loan. And then, there are less of them. And with that, U.S. Federal Reserve reveals that 722 banks reported unrealized losses, over 50% of capital, as concerns over U.S. banking crisis grows. By the way, there are 4,844 insured commercial banks in the U.S. But what is the unrealized losses? Well, these are losses on, a lot of this is on commercial real estate loans. A lot of this is with just the capital requirements. So you may have a bank that has $100 billion in assets, but when you adjust those for losses in the industry, values in commercial real estate and so on going down, they're in a position of negative equity. And I found this as well, so I threw this in. So back in 1940, that was a long time ago, right? There was almost 15,000 banks in the U.S., and you can see how that kind of vacillated along until, right in here in the 80s. And then, right now we have about 4,844 commercial federally insured banks in the U.S. And then, clearly almost 20% of those have reported negative equity in their lending pool. So more on that. All this means, guys, is that, well, as credit continues to tighten, it gets harder and harder and harder for folks to go out and qualify for a loan to buy a house. Well, we know what we know, and we know that creative financing, buying and selling on terms, fills that gap. And that's our continuous message here at Note School. So with that, I want to bring on our esteemed leader, Chief Creative Visionary Officer, founder of Note School, all-around good guy, my friend, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. That was a mouthful.
Hey, I ran that stat just so you have it.
Yep.
The 185 now down to 99. That is a 45% drop.
Yeah. Okay. 45. Yep.
Yeah. So we're not quite at 50% yet, but the bank situation, obviously we're keeping a big eye on. We see this as being a huge scenario for really all the things that Note School has high expertise in, which is buying notes and creative forms of financing. So our guest today is really going to be a fun interview, because here's a guy that is not scared to change his world to make it better.
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited about that. So, Joe.
All right. Will you bring him on? I'm going to jump off, and I'll see you here on the backside.
All right, Joe. Thank you very much. So our guest today owns a real estate brokerage operation, very successful guy in that space, but he wasn't satisfied with just that. He was wanting to create ways to really gain net worth and stability, and take his livelihood out of just a transactional income environment. And I think that was a really smart decision. I think you're going to think, along with me, that this is a smart guy, and I'm excited to have him today and to tell really that story and what that looks like. So you guys welcome Mr. Mark Hewitt.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. We're neighbors. You're here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Mark, I told you that we have a lot of real estate people that are kind of shifting gears. We've seen this before. I saw a lot of this trend after 2008. But I would say the fastest growing student in Note School today is somebody that has a real estate brokerage business. Now, that doesn't mean that's all that comes there, but you're kind of wonder, like, what does a real estate brokerage operation, what does that have to do with notes or creative financing?
Yeah. Well, basically for us, the way that we set up our business is, number one, like you're saying, the retail side. We went ahead and got the investment business going, where we'll wholesale a lot of properties. We find deals, we get to cherry pick through those. But at the same time with that, I realized that there was an opportunity, why you and I connected, is because you're, to me, the guru, right? But I realized there was an opportunity to be able to get into the note space and find deals that we maybe were throwing to the side. And that's kind of the biggest thing for us, and which has been instrumental for us.
Well, you've heard our kind of tagline, right? Close more deals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're saying, right? You were looking a way to close more deals. So
Exactly.
First of all, I want to welcome you to our Note School family. We are honored to have you. You're a real contributor, and thank you for that. And we just enjoy having you at our events. In fact, hopefully we're going to see you here in the next couple of days at our members event, right?
Yes, sir.
So I want to go back a little bit, and I'm not asking you to duplicate what you've said. I want you to kind of think about a little bit, like, when you connected with us, what was it that you were looking for?
Yeah, no, the biggest thing when I connected with you, I realized that there was an opportunity for us that we were missing out on. There were deals that we were basically just throwing to the side like everybody else because we couldn't make it work from a cash offer perspective, right? Where our buy box was so limited And so, you and I connected, and basically through Note School, I started learning about all these ways that we can make these deals turn into something, right? I mean, from maybe the cash offer doesn't work, but we can actually come in and buy it and create a note, and it's still a win-win for both parties. And then recently I've had a huge aha for me is, there's a lot of properties we come across with distressed landlords that basically they're not getting paid, but they don't want to kick their tenant out. And so through the clauses that y'all went over on Tuesday, I realized it's like, man, there's another opportunity on top of what we're already doing that we can actually pitch to these people and purchase their house and not pay them until we get the tenant evicted and start cash flowing. And that, it's just little things like that just are game changers for us.
We talk a lot about burnout landlords, and Mark, you're a successful landlord. I know you run in a circle of people that are successful landlords, but my observation on people that aren't successful landlords is it's too small time for them. They only have 1 to 5. Right.
Yeah.
And they haven't built a business out of it. And they don't even know what the business model even really looks like. In other words, they don't have a system.
Yeah. So
I want to talk about that. When you're talking to one of these landlords, what is it you're seeing about what they've done wrong?
One of the things that we come across a lot is get involved with family, right? They basically let a family member stay in the house, paying next to little to nothing, and then they're not taking care of it. So that's one thing that we come across. Number 2 is, like you're saying, they're not actually vetting these people. Like, they're just basically getting somebody that's applying for the house, and they want to pay their price, and so they take them. Little do they know this person maybe doesn't have a great rental history, whatever it may be, doesn't take care of the house. They're not checking on the house. It's just, those are the things that we come across a lot, I would say.
They say there was a stat in the last month, and I don't know if it was Adam or Black Knight, but it was a credible source. About 8.5 million people are not current on their rent.
Mm-hmm.
So we all kind of think the virus is over and none of that happened and stuff. And what you're saying is, Mark, it's pretty rampant that it's not over.
No, it's not. We see it all the time. And actually, I feel like it's just ramping up even more, especially as you start seeing, the increases in utility prices and groceries and gas and all these different things that are now a trickle down effect. People believe, and this as well as anybody, but typically people feel like they can put their rent off later down the road, but they're going to pay all those other bills first, which baffles me, but that's typically what we find.
Hey, my cousin won't evict me.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Or it's a friend, right?
I have so many friends and family that are not in the real estate business, and I'm sure you do too. It's endless of they got one rent house or 3 or 5. And then they start telling me these stories, and I'm like, what were you thinking? I don't say that, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, what were you thinking? What made you suspect this guy was even going to pay?
Yep.
Or he, I let him in for lower rent and he's going to fix it up. That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep. Yeah.
Anyway,
that never works out. We all know that.
Yeah, it's obviously whatever somebody does for a living, you have a bigger vantage point than somebody that just occasionally sees, an issue. And we see this issue over and over. Mark, I want to talk about, first of all, I want to really commend you. I mentioned to you the real estate brokerage model because we see a lot of people now, the brokerage model's off, right? The brokerage model is off at the moment, right? The numbers are down.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about it. You've heard me tell stories about my father-in-law, got me in the business a long time ago. And he used to, he had a real Southern accent. He would talk about getting a check forever. Right. And what he meant by that was you can create a transaction with a note and get a check for a long time in the future. And all of a sudden it allows you to be really aggressive, and whenever the market allows you to be aggressive in the brokerage or flipping houses, it doesn't mean you can't do other things. It just means, my father-in-law used to say, Eddie, you can make a lot of money when your living is made at the beginning of every year.
Mm-hmm.
And what he meant by that is you had predictable income during the year that you didn't have to go find transactional money just to survive.
Exactly.
And it seems like to me, you've really worked at that.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. When I got into this business, the biggest thing for me is the way that I was going to make that, lifelong income was to basically get into what I knew or actually I didn't really know, but other people had kind of guided me with, was buying rental property, right? I mean, that was the biggest thing for me. And I really made it a goal to take the profits and reinvest those into rentals. And then, as I started learning and growing and finding out more things about the business, then the next thing was, who knew you could buy a property and go finance it and be the bank? I'm like, well, the banks are the ones that make all the money, so I can do that too, And so I started doing that and realizing that, through basically purchasing the rentals and doing the notes and things like that, that I was going to be able to create that cash flow that you're talking about that was really going to accelerate. And it really started accelerating when we started doing the notes. Because let's face it, rentals to me don't make the lucrative cash flow. It's my notes that are making the lucrative cash flow. And so we've taken some of our rentals and converted them into notes as well.
I think a lot of people really miss that. If you're looking for the highest cash flow model, it's a note model. It's not a rental.
Yeah.
And because think about it, you're the bank. You don't have to pay the expenses. You don't have to pay the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the management. Your tenant's paying that. Your borrower's paying that. Whereas the tenant isn't paying it for you. Right. So.
Yeah. And what's crazy too, what's so funny is we've got all of our cap rates broken down for all of our properties and things like that. And I treat the owner finance stuff that we've done as the same, as far as looking at the cap rate. And what's funny is I took a look at this statistic, and our cap rate average for the stuff that we've actually rented ends up being roughly about 14%, right?
Which is amazing.
Yeah, which is great, like no complaints whatsoever. But then you go and look at the stuff that we've owner financed, and our cap rate is over 30%. And so it's over double on stuff that we don't have to worry about anything, right? I mean, it's, so it's just interesting.
So many people argue with you, I want rentals because I have appreciation. But when we reach a market that's not appreciating, sometimes we look at the income potential of notes. When you know how to run that math and you've learned that really well, then all of a sudden you're like, man, we're in a note cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, a lot of people hear about how in the world could you find, if you're paying cash for houses and you know how to do that really well, how do you dig through the garbage can and find a deal that otherwise wouldn't close because you're at an impasse on price?
So I'll give you a perfect example that we actually just came across, and I took this, to the deal lab and everything as well. And basically we had a gentleman that, it was a house that was worth, after repairs and everything, we figured about 200 to 210. And, this is one of those deals that we went out on the appointment, and it was a mailer lead of ours, and we offered him 100. And he said, no, I'm not doing 100. I've got other rental properties, but I just, we asked him, well, what's your biggest concern? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Right. And he said, I want cash flow. Like, I just want cash flow without the headache. Right. And so we said, well, listen, at what price would you be willing to sell this property if we had another alternative option for you? And he said, if I could get 150, then I would sell this property. Now, way back in the past, right, we would take that deal and go, well, we can't make this work. See you later. Throw it away. But the biggest thing for us is we said, hey, you know what? As a matter of fact, what if we could get the cash flow that you wanted and be able to do it where you didn't have to worry about the property and still give you the 150? Would that be an option? He said, absolutely. And so here we are with a property that we've, we're setting on to close on Friday. But we've got a note that's basically, 3.25% starting off for the first 5 years, paying them 150. Our average payments will be roughly like with everything, we're at 1,000 or just under, and we'll turn around and owner finance that for $1,700 a month. And so we're going to make a sizable spread on that deal. And by the way, we're only giving him $12,000 down, but we're going to ask for $40,000 down from the other buyer. So we're still going to make our money on the back end as well before we even start making the cash flow, right?
That's what a lot of people don't see, Mark. They think that if I do owner financing or if I do creative financing, that I'm somehow going to miss making some upfront money. And I fully understand you have an overhead, right? It's not like,
for sure.
The sad thing is all your employees don't work for free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. So you need some transactional money, which is going to throw you off a pretty good amount. But what you just described to me is you're talking about $700, $800 a month for a long time in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I mean, and the thing is, what's awesome is where can you go buy a property today at an average rate of 3 3/4, right? Because over the 30-year loan, every 5 years, it's going to readjust. But thanks to also the tactics that you've taught as well, we're readjusting the rate on the new principal balance.
Correct.
And so, so basically, where could you get that today? You can't, right? I just called my bank the other day, and they're at 8.5% on a. Why would you do that?
Well, and one of the things, Mark, you and I've talked about this a lot. We've sort of mechanized this now. I remember when you brought that deal, we literally could send you the spreadsheet with just a template and bang, 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 put in the numbers, and you were very clear and articulate about what you were negotiating for, but we could build some mechanics around it where you didn't have to stop. And you are a good calculator whiz, but you didn't need to be.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Your employees could have plugged in the number and come up with a result.
Yep, 100%.
So that to me is like something that we've really tried to do because I've taken it to heart. Like, I don't want it just to have to be Mark himself that works on the deals. I want it to be scalable. And another thing I want to talk about, is like the most impressive thing about you, Mark. I don't believe I've ever told you this, but you were connected. You knew some very advanced real estate folks that said, hey, you need to go meet Eddie. And you did. And we met and but it doesn't matter whether somebody has an incredible real estate resume or they have almost none. Mm-hmm. The first step to making a change is action.
Yeah.
And you were not scared to take action.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to rearrange some things to get to a 3-day class. And I told you, I said, Mark, I appreciate your background, but I said, if you miss this class, you're going to miss some background information that is going to be critical no matter how far we advance in the business with you.
Yeah.
And think about it. Like, if you would have missed some of those components, it would have taken a while to go fill those gaps in.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
All right. Let's hear a little bit about Mark's family. I want to know your why.
So basically for me, it's so funny because I look, I was at an event and listened to somebody speak years ago when I first got in the business, right? I mean, this is, I had no idea what could happen, right? And somebody had said basically that he does it to make memories with his family. And I was like, well, it's kind of cheesy, So, but here you go, fast forward to today. And really, I've got my wife, I've got a son who's 8, my daughter's 3, got a newborn due in June. And, basically for me, like what I've realized is because of what real estate's been able to do for us, we've been able to take my wife's family, on trips. We've gone on trips to numerous places. Like basically I realized like I got what that person's saying. I thoroughly enjoy making memories for my family, things that we won't forget. And so, that's my why. And once I figured that out, it was like, I was like that. I get it now.
Yeah.
And that's what drives me.
My father-in-law sadly passed away at 59 years old. You've heard a lot about him, but he didn't get to live to be an old man. He was very successful, started me in the business when I was 20 years old, and he was wise. He really was just a wise person. And he basically, in his will, he basically did essentially kind of like a codicil to the will. And it was a letter addressed to me. And so I couldn't say to you, it was maybe 4 pages long, but I could tell you that opening paragraph, I will never forget as long as I live. And I think you probably heard me say it, but it's worth repeating. He said, Eddie, always remember this. Money spent on fond memories is never wasted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is, you work hard and you work to be smart, but you're working with a purpose in mind. And I think you're leaving our audience with something meaningful. We do all the opportunity is ahead of us, right? I'm sure you're hearing us bang about the banks all the time and this stuff that's happening. And I think it's going to be uglier than people think. But I can tell you right now that I was full-fledged, deeply involved in the business in the banking debacle in the 80s. And I can tell you right now that there's nothing that changed my life and changed my net worth more than that scenario. And I would say that there's going to be people that don't know what to do and are not going to do well. And there's going to be people that know what to do and are going to do really well.
Yeah.
And so, I know that's, obviously our next horizon. And clearly, I don't think you're immune to buying notes as well.
Nope.
Because I think that's absolutely going to be probably next on your horizon. But you've added to your real estate business this creative finance strategy, and as you said, selling even some of your rentals and owner financing them. So,
yeah,
Mark, what would you say, kind of like to spin it around? Like what have you noticed, or what wisdom could you share with the audience?
The biggest thing for me is a lot of times what I see in this business, and I know you get to see it as well, but people are not willing to change or pivot away from what they already know or are used to. And so, my motto when I got into this business was, listen, I'm going to seek the best people in each separate thing that I'm looking for, right? It was why you and I connected. And with that being said, I'm going to listen to what they say and I'm going to do it and I'm going to try, right? And if I fail, I'm going to learn from it, but I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to be willing to change and adapt to what the market is going to be giving you, because you can't force something, but you can always take what it gives you, right? And that's basically what we've set up for ourselves. And I would recommend to all of your students and anybody listening is don't be afraid to change, because the market is going to give you things that maybe you thought weren't even possible or even knew how to do. You just got to listen and be willing to do it.
When you first started buying houses, you understood buy low, sell high.
Yes.
It was hard to believe that you could essentially overpay and make it one of the most profitable deals you've done this year.
Yeah.
Right. But you overpaid with creative financing, paying with tomorrow's dollars, not today. Right.
Exactly.
Mr. Joe.
Well, yeah. So many things on that. And Eddie, if you hadn't have said what Mr. Shoemake said, I was going to remind you about fond memories, and that is absolutely the truth. Mark, we all know, and you were talking about change, and just think of how, just look at real estate folks that are, buy and sell real estate. That's
Yeah.
brokers. I mean, they've got to reinvent themselves, and that's a change process. And look at all the folks that work at mortgage servicers and banks and mortgage loan originators. All that's different. So that's all we know, is that it will change. Yeah. And the other part of that I took from this, that I want to kind of restate for everybody. So Mark says he's got a deal. He's putting $12,000 in, but getting $40,000 down. So he's going to make $28,000 or so today, and then $700 or $800 a month for a long, long time. And that's, well, to coin what a really great man says, if that doesn't light your fire, your wood's wet. That's an Eddie, folks.
Oh, Mark, thank you. This has been meaningful. There's a lot of people that are in a similar situation to you, and I think you're showing them a crack of how to go, find your way through it, to journey through a little bit, be a little entrepreneurial, be willing to change. And I'm betting that you're looking at these changes in the market with a very different light than a lot of people that are in your business.
100%.
Yeah. Thank you.
All
right.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Mark. We appreciate you. And folks, thanks for watching today. And we appreciate you. Also, again, make sure and send us any comments that you would have. Send the likes in that you love or like, right? Mark and what he had to say today. And we'd love to have you guys in one of our 2-hour master classes done by Eddie and Max Keller, who is our chief market officer. So we'd love to have you do that. The price is right. You can come. You can spend a couple of hours with Eddie on that and Max. Well, it's no charge for you guys, and we're going to talk about and show you what else we can do and all of these strategies that Mark and Eddie were just talking about. So that's it for this week. We appreciate it, and we will see you next week, same place, same time. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk soon. Bye now.